10 reasons why we lost Project Spark. E3 2013. Microsoft announced that they wanted to, and I quote, "give the gift of games to everybody, to give the ability to create in the hands of everyone." And to this end, they created Project Spark, a game that allowed you to make your own games for both Xbox and PC. It was meant to be a flagship product for the launch of the new Xbox One, and also be a crossover product for PC and touchscreens. After launch, it lasted less than 2 years, and Microsoft shut down the servers and destroyed everything that had been created. They even felt embarrassed enough about it to give everyone their money back. So what went wrong? Number 1. It was in beta for too long. They launched it to the general public as an open beta in March 2014, but didn't launch officially for another 7 months. Now that's 7 months of everyone playing it with a lot of bugs and teething issues in place, and all the cool stuff that they were saving up for after launch completely missing. They also had some features that were very unpopular, such as Spark Time, where you had to accumulate credits in order to play the games. That went out the window, but some people would have abandoned Project Spark at that point because they didn't like that feature. Anyone who was interested in the game would have experienced it in its incomplete and flawed state and would have made up their minds about it at that point. Some were willing to put up with the constant issues, while others were put off. And that's even before launch. Many tried it in beta and never came back, thinking it hadn't changed hardly at all. Number 2, the name. It's an industry standard to come up with a code name for your product or game and call it Project whatever, only to name it at launch. For example, Project Reality became the Nintendo 64. When they announced the game at E3, it was called Project Spark, which made sense, it was in development. But they stuck with the name. Now, although it makes sense in terms of the fact that it's a game about game development, and that name's clever, right? But for some people, they were still waiting for the game to come out of development. So many people posted after the shutdown they didn't even know it was out of beta. You mean they actually called it Project Spark? Number 3, the style. The cartoon-like style of Project Spark made it look like a kid's game. It put a lot of people off. It also looked a lot like the very old Fable 2, which by the time of the game launch was 6 years old. Now, time moves quickly in the gaming industry, and the style looked old and naff to a lot of people. Many cited the look of the graphics as their main reason for staying away. The main style, and the one that they advertised most heavily, was fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons. But there were no Dungeons and no Dragons at launch, they came after. But there was also other obvious things missing and were never really introduced. There was a lack of four-legged animals, farm animals, etc., a lack of old characters or fat characters. All the characters in Project Spark were thin, boyish frames. There was no dresses. All the women wore trousers. We got a sci-fi pack, but the style was very rigid. There was a lack of alien models or spaceship parts. There was also nothing available in a modern style, which made creating first-person shooters problematic. The constant swirl design that was applied to almost every prop was also infuriating. And the lack of symmetry in the prop also made making things yourself more difficult than it needed to be, and that's if you don't count the fact that some of the props wouldn't shrink or grow to the sizes that you needed them to be useful. But perhaps that was on purpose, due to number 4, which is a major problem, microtransactions. The big turn-off for many people was the cost. Now, Project Spark's main game was completely free. You could easily play for months without paying a dime. But those tempting prop packs that you could buy with microtransactions were constantly in your face. It's not as if you could avoid them. And some must-haves, such as leaderboards, the ability to colour the ground, and multiplayer, were also purchasable items. If they had launched the game with a standard value and had a subscription model for the year's DLC packs, I think they would have had less gamer backlash than making everyone pay for pack after pack after pack. In 2 years, I spent about £150 on the game. Now, that's quite expensive for a game. It's cheap for a game engine, so it depends on whether you regard Project Spark as a game or not. For me, it was worth it, as it was on. I had it on all day, every day, but I could see how terrifying the cost looked to anyone first downloading the game. It just looked like a bottomless pit of expense. Parents don't want their children playing games that require constant injections of cash, so I think they lost a lot of people because of the microtransactions alone. It felt like you were just lining Microsoft's greedy pocket. Number 5, the soft launch. There were no TV ads, no in-shop displays. The launch of Project Spark was about as low-key as you can get, to the extent that many people were unaware it even launched at closed down and were upset that they'd missed it. This was supposed to be their answer to Minecraft, for goodness sake, and hardly anyone knew it existed. I went into shops on the day of launch, and I found a single copy on the bottom shelf behind another game. That's in a major retailer. Nobody knew about it. It was like a private club for a few thousand people. Number 6, they aimed it at the wrong people. The vast majority of Project Spark superfans are in their 30s and 40s. These are the people who were brought up on ZX Spectrums and Commodores, where computer programming at home for your entertainment was what you did. To be able to do that on your Xbox was a fantastic idea to them. You just needed to look at the nostalgic recreations of old games in Project Spark, Pac-Man, Space Invaders, etc., to see where the appeal was. But Project Spark thought their audience were children and Minecraft players. Their main game offering was Crossroads, a simple quest RPG that lasts about 10 minutes. For adults, it was a tedious, boring and childish mess. To make matters worse, in order to gain credits, you had to grind that game on a daily basis. You can learn to hate Crossroads very quickly. My 8-year-old nephew liked it for a couple of goes, and then he got bored with it too. Then you had the Champions Quest, which was supposed to be another fun way of grinding for credits and making your champions level up. Leveling up the champion meant you got more props. So you felt forced to play a game which, to be honest, wasn't much fun. They then added Conquer. Now, the addition of Conquer, I think, was trying to appeal to 18 to 25-year-olds, in that they would recognise the title from their childhood and be all nostalgic. But again, this is the wrong demographic. The Conquer fans were annoyed to hell that Project Spark had resurrected their favourite foul-mouthed rodent, and instead of giving them a real new Conquer game, it was now put into this kids game. And as for the 30 to 50-year-olds, we were bemused, we'd never heard of Conquer and couldn't care less about it. The props were a good addition, we needed more modern items, but other than that, it wasn't a big selling point for us. Number 7, bugs and false promises. Project Spark was fraught with issues from the beginning. There were big and small bugs throughout the game, some caused by the constant updates they made to the game in the first 2 years. Some were large, game-breaking bugs, some were tiny, spelling mistakes, etc. that are not really important, but some of them were major, game-killing bugs. They also promised the community props and characters and features, but then never delivered on them. There was coming soon stickers on everything, and then these were gradually removed, but the item never turned up. Such as additional game titles within Crossroads, we ended up with just Adventure, when it was supposed to be Adventure and something else and something else. Multiplayer was only for Xbox users, so PC users were pretty annoyed about it, and then it didn't work very well with major synchronization issues, so Xbox users were annoyed about it as well. And that's Xbox One users, don't forget. The Xbox 360 version of the game that was promised for ages just got canned, and then they kept quiet about it. This disappointed a lot of people. People who, if they hadn't been led on, might have bought an Xbox One and got Project Spark rather than waiting for it to come to their console, which is something I can't believe was ever really feasible. Number 8, the feeds, achievement hunters and protection. The biggest selling point of Project Spark should have been the variety and quality of the community-made levels. The search facilities on the community level area were so bad it was impossible to find anything. You could not search by a creator or even a game type. Their category feeds should only show you 100 games of any theme or type, so many amazing games just dropped from the feeds completely. The voting system was so flawed and open to abuse they removed it, so it was nearly impossible to tell if a game was even worth playing, and most weren't. To make matters worse, the ethos of the game was to share everything. What this meant in practice was a creator would spend 200 hours making something they were proud of, and within 5 minutes someone made an exact copy of your game, changed the name, launched it and got tons of downloads with no effort on their part at all. They add lineage to this when they realised that there was a problem, but it still didn't solve anything. And when the game launched with achievements, this type of thing became epidemic, with 70% of the feed being copies of other people's games, or worse, empty worlds with nothing in it at all. The feeds became full of rubbish. New players coming to the game would see a level that had been voted up by a lot of people, only to find it was not a great game, but just something made for an achievement by an achievement hunter, and it had been voted up by all of his followers from Reddit. I believe that the easy to achieve achievements on Project Spark attracted so many people who were just not interested in the game at all for its merits that it destroyed the quality of the game completely. Number 9. The creators made poor games. There were some very good creators who made some innovative and interesting levels, but the vast majority made 5-minute, thrown together dumps of props. Those with some skill made unconvincing or pale imitations of AAA games, myself included. Well, it's an easy starting point, make something you know and enjoy playing. But why would anyone want to play Flappy Bird or Five Nights at Freddy's on Project Spark and not the real thing? It will not be as good, it won't look as good, it will not play as well. Long-term Project Spark fans appreciated the hard work and skill at making an 8-bit game style in Project Spark, but most casual gamers coming to Project Spark are just going to see the limitations of it. Ooh, Flappy Bird, it's rubbish. Project Spark is not designed to make Halo or Overwatch or Call of Duty. It's also not really designed to make Tetris or Tower Defense or Space Invaders, but people did make those things with different degrees of success. There was just not enough good original programming that championed what Project Spark was good at. A possible cause was the lack of official tutorials. Getting into Project Spark involved a lot of dedication to seek out help for yourself. You couldn't just load the game and get on with it. You needed the official forum, the YouTube videos, and all of this relied on the community to provide it. Team Dakota did not make a user manual. They did not even know how many brain tiles they had created, and didn't put explanations of all the brain tiles actually in the game. They wanted other people to do it for them. Getting to people to understand how to play the game didn't seem to be a priority for them until they hired some community members to get on with it. Well, it was a bit too little too late. For some people coming to the game, it was a little too daunting, too much like hard work, too much like programming, which, well, of course it is. Children don't want to be doing something that feels like studying, and you need to study to master Project Spark. You need at least a year before you can create something really amazing. But they shut it down, just as some creators were getting into their stride and some really amazing games were coming out. But the big thing, number 10, Microsoft bought Minecraft. When Project Spark first came out, it was touted as a Minecraft killer. It was the title. It was going to be the game for 2015. However, the death knell really started to toll when Microsoft bought Minecraft from Mojang in September 2014. Now that's 1 month before Project Spark's launch. So, instead of trying to compete with a rival product, which was the original aim, Project Spark was a distraction from the $2.5 billion investment. No wonder they didn't want to make a song and dance about it. When you see that most of Team Dakota were moved into the Minecraft team, the purchase probably killed Project Spark. they needed the expertise of the team redeployed. It was not desirable for the developers to continue working on a game with a small community when they could be working on the biggest game in the world, and you can't blame them for thinking of their careers. As dedicated I'm sure some of them were to the game, it just failed to ignite. There are other possible issues. Certainly they had a licensing problem with some of the content, and this may have forced their hand at the end. But in the end, the problem was a lack of numbers. They needed millions of players to make it pay. And by the end, I think there was less than 5,000 dedicated fans, and at its peak, I'm not sure it got over 1 million. Probably half of that, at a guess. After all, the most downloaded community game on Project Spark never got past 250,000 individuals downloading it. Well, for the fans, we want it back. The servers back on, or the ability to share, or better yet, a better version of Project Spark, geared around adult developers, not children, with the tools we need to make sophisticated console games. I will still play it and make tutorials and archive the community, but I'd hate that the code language they don't code you to be just thrown away. It's so good and so useful as a gateway into programming languages. So what's the future for Project Spark? Well, obviously Microsoft have thrown it away. A huge shame. A lot of work was put into that. I would hate to think that they have completely shelved it forever. Possibly they might do something with it. If it has a big enough fan base behind it, as a nostalgic thing, maybe we'll get it back in a few years. But in the meantime, all we can do is play the game as we've got it and share it on YouTube, make things, share it with communities, and have fun. And that's what Project Spark should be about. It should be about having some fun. So I'm going to be opening up my channel again to Project Spark. I'm going to be making tutorials. I'm going to be issuing challenges, and hopefully there will be a few people that will join me and we'll just have some fun. And if I win the lottery, I'm buying it off of Microsoft. And that's a promise. Okay, thanks for watching.